You're sitting across the fire from someone. 2 weeks ago you shared everything with them: food, warmth, the same sleeping skins. Tonight they are sitting farther away, not far enough to be in danger. Just far enough that the message is clear. For 99% of human history, this was the closest thing to a breakup. There were no apartments to move out of, no shared leases, no mutual friends to divide into teams, no social media to block or mute. Just a small group of 20 to 40 people, and the sudden, quiet shift of one relationship inside it. So what actually happened when two people stopped choosing each other? Let's start with the hard limit of the situation. In a hunter-gatherer band, you could not disappear. Leaving the group alone was dangerous and often fatal. Predators, injury, starvation, and other humans made solitude a serious risk. So when a pair bond ended, both people almost always stayed. They still walked the same territory. They still ate from the same kills. They still slept within sight of each other most nights. The end of a relationship was not a clean exit. It was a renegotiation of space and attention inside a very small world. Anthropologists who have lived with modern groups still practicing mobile foraging, the Hadza of Tanzania, the Kung of the Kalahari, the Ache of Paraguay, describe a pattern that appears again and again. Romantic and sexual bonds form and dissolve more fluidly than in agricultural or industrial societies. Jealousy exists. Hurt exists. Anger exists. But the intense social pressure to stay together for the children, for property, or for status is much weaker. When the feeling cools, people simply stop selecting each other. What does that look like in daily life? At first the change is almost invisible to an outsider. One person stops sitting quite as close by the fire. They offer food a little less quickly. They choose different companions for the day's foraging or hunting. They laugh a little less easily at the other's jokes. The other person notices immediately. In a group this small, everyone notices. There is rarely a single dramatic conversation. The shift in behavior is the conversation. Sometimes the person who is left feels the loss sharply. They may become quieter for days. They may seek more physical closeness or attention from others in the band. They may pick small arguments over meat shares or sleeping spots. But prolonged public drama is uncommon. In a world where your survival depends on group cooperation, loud emotional displays that force everyone to take sides are costly. People learn early that the group's stability matters more than any single pair bond. The rest of the band usually stays carefully neutral. They do not form factions the way modern friend groups often do. They simply adjust. Sleeping arrangements shift by a few meters. Food sharing networks rearrange slightly. After a few weeks the new pattern feels normal, even if one person is still carrying private pain. When children are involved, the practical reality is straightforward. In most documented foraging societies the child remains primarily with the mother, but fathers and other adults continue to provide food and protection. There is no losing the child in the modern sense. The child still sees both parents every day. They simply no longer see them as a single unit. Here is the part that feels most foreign to modern minds. There was very little private ownership of the emotional kind. You did not own someone's time, attention, or future in the way many people feel today. Deep bonds existed. People formed strong attachments. Some pairs stayed together for years. But the cultural story that one person should be your everything, your best friend, your only lover, your primary emotional home, your entire future, had not been invented yet. That story arrived much later. It came with agriculture, permanent houses, inherited land, and eventually the ideal of the nuclear family. For children, for the next day's food. Once people started accumulating property and needing clear lines of inheritance, controlling pair bonds became more important. Monogamy tightened. Exit became harder. The emotional stakes of any single relationship rose. For hundreds of thousands of years before that shift, when a bond ended you did not lose your entire social world. You lost one connection inside a living web that still held you. You still had the same people to hunt with, the same fire to sit around at night, the same stories, the same jokes, the same children running between the adults, the same knowledge of which plants were ready and which animal trails were active. The pain was real. Humans have always felt rejection and loss. The nervous system that makes heartbreak possible is ancient. But the container that held the pain was wider and more stable. There was less total isolation. Less erasure of the shared daily life. Less sense that the future itself had been deleted. You live in a world where a breakup can mean losing your home, your routine, half your friends, your plans, and sometimes your sense of who you are. It can feel like the floor disappearing under your feet. Your ancestors lived in a world where the floor stayed. Only one person moved a few steps farther from the fire. That does not make their losses smaller or less human. It simply means the structure around the loss was different. The group remained. The daily work remained. The night sky and the morning tasks remained. They still hurt. They still adjusted in silence or in small sharp moments. They still woke up the next day and kept living next to the person who no longer chose them. And the band kept moving because it had no other choice. The same hands that once reached for each other in the dark now reached for tools. Only the distance between two people had changed.